Hello everybody and welcome to the latest edition of Forever Blues with myself, Neil Moxley, and my co-host Colin Tattum. It's nice to see Colin wearing grey today instead of his usual claret, so that's got the day off to a good start. Obviously we're speaking ahead of the game against Stoke City, a little bit of housekeeping before we get underway. Big thanks as per usual to Davison's Law. So Col, Stoke City after the 2-week international break, plenty of time for Chris Davies to reflect on what happened at the King Power. And Stoke have got off to a pretty good start this season, mate.
Yeah, I think Stoke have probably surprised a few people. Obviously, I think they only stayed up on the last day, didn't they? Back in May. But a very good start, three wins out of 4. Probably the international break has not come at a good time for them. They probably felt they had a bit of momentum going, whereas Blues have sort of coming off the back of a defeat at the King Power probably came at the right time, so a little bit of regroup, restock, and obviously assimilating a couple of new signings in as well, and checking on a few injuries. So it'll be interesting. It's almost starting afresh after 4 games, isn't it? Which is the bonkers way that the international calendar falls. I know you've been down to the Henley and Arden training ground for Chris Davies' press conference. So anything of note to come out of that?
Yeah, obviously the updates on the injuries was the main thing. Jay Stansfield, as we know, was involved in that pretty heavy block tackle, ruled him out of the game at the King Power. And then there was issues as well with Demarai, and I just checked upon the Marvin Duck situation as well. Top and bottom of it is that Jay Stansfield and Demarai are both back in full-time training. And as revealed on our website earlier this week, should be available for Chris Davies. Marvin Dux as well has been involved in training as well. So pretty much a clean bill of health, mate. I mean, the one thing that sort of Chris Davies did say he was doing was sitting down with all the international players. We're speaking today on Wednesday afternoon. He said he'd be doing that on Thursday and basically just assessing where they are. Because, I was, before I started getting involved in sports journalism and going on some of these trips, I was very much of the mind that they're professional athletes. They might be professional athletes, but how difficult can it be getting on a plane? But having been on a few of these trips, it does take it out of players, and I can fully appreciate that, despite the fact that our preparation for the game is normally far different to theirs. So look, I think Chris Davies is going to be sitting down with the likes of Brightsay Samuel's been to Africa, Paik, who's been in the US, obviously with South Korea. I think they played Mexico. Those are the 2 sort of main ones. I know William Williamson's been away as well.
I don't think he played. I don't think he played.
Oh, right,
okay. Lewis Kumas came on Tuesday against Canada for Wales, and the interesting one, as you mentioned there, sorry to interrupt, was it's Paik. He played 90 minutes in New Jersey against the USA. South Korea won. It's a fantastic result for them, but then he didn't play in the Tuesday match in Nashville against Mexico. So he'll be the interesting one from a Blues perspective, won't it? I think the others are par for the course. Interesting that Stoke as well have some, not issues, but they will be doing the same, checking on a few of their players. Paik's compatriot Paik Seung-ho, who also played for South Korea in the States. And then England under-21s had a long old trip to Kazakhstan, which is, I don't know, almost far east into China, isn't it?
Yeah.
I believe it's one heck of a trek. Obviously, James Beadle started, but we're expecting James Beadle will be on the bench. But it was interesting that Divine Mubamba, the striker on loan from Manchester City, he started that game, and obviously he's done very well for Stoke so far. So again, I'm sure Mark Robbins will be checking on his internationals just as much as Chris Davies will be.
Yeah, I mean, Paik's interesting from us because that, with the greatest of respect, but like I say, people, all joking apart, people don't realise quite how much the international travel takes out of players. I mean, there's some miles there actually going to New Jersey, and obviously then down to Nashville, then back home inside a couple of weeks. I mean, the majority of people, I would say, have been on holidays. They on a plane. So they understand what that it is tiring. I mean, can you give a flavour of what it might do to an international sportsman?
Well, I can give you a flavour of a Jet2 holiday if that's any good. No. I think it's the physical, mental, emotional thing as well. If you're playing for your country as well, it means something, doesn't it? It will take a lot out of you. And then if you're coming back in the early hours, or either Thursday morning, you're expected in on training. Next thing you know, 2 days later, you've got if you've got a long trip somewhere else in the league. It is draining, like you said, and until you go on these trips, you don't realise you're constantly on the go. But as you said, modern football nowadays, sports science, etc., will have measures in place for this, and managers, head coaches will be sensible as well in how they then utilise the players of a weekend, especially if there's another game coming in the following midweek as well. So although I can't give you any insight on my recent Jet2 holidays, there's a little bit of waffle for you on the international travel.
I mean, look, we're going to Stoke. I mean, like you said, they've had a decent start. I mean, the standout victory for me was the one over at Southampton. I get the feeling very much with Stoke that it's been a summer of reset for them. It's been the first sort of like pre-season, and that John Walters, the new technical director of football, whatever you want to call him, the bloke that chooses the players, has had it in situ. And anybody that's seen John Walters or spoken to him knows he's quite sharp. You would expect him to bring in some players who actually fit Stoke's raison d'etre and the way Mark Robins likes to play. He used to be solid like meat and two veg 4-4-2 guy, Mark Robins, and then all of a sudden he's resurfaced with Adi Vivash at Coventry as a guy that plays through the thirds, 4-3-3, rotates his midfield, all that sort of carry on. But he's a wily old fox at this level. He knows what he's doing. He knows that where to hit Blues. And strangely, I actually saw he wasn't under Robins, but I'm expecting a pretty similar performance to the one I saw them give early in last season when they beat Mark Robins' Coventry side, Stoke, 1-0. They were, it's a cliche, but we're going to have to fall into it because it's true. Cliches sometimes are true. They're a tough nut to crack, Stoke. They always have been on their own patch. I'm expecting, to be honest, the script to be pretty similar to what it always has been at Stoke.
It's an interesting point you make there about Mark Robins and John Walters. I've read a little bit of stuff about them, and they seem pretty much in cahoots and pretty much aligned in what they're looking to do recruitment-wise, which you always need that between manager and technical director, sporting director, or whatever the title is. So and I think they brought in 11 players. They had, like as you mentioned, they had a bit of a reset as well, and probably they probably surprised themselves on how well they've started. But it's 4 games in. There's a 2-week break, so like I said, it's a reset. You go again. Interesting as well on the site, the our Forever Blues website, the piece that James McClare did on the opposition insight. He was saying that Stoke actually give you a bit of a chance because in terms of the midfield, that they can be quite loose.
Right, okay.
That there are spaces to exploit there. They take not risks, but they do tend to sort of push up en masse on the opposition, and that can leave spaces, and you can exploit between the lines and straight, vertical passing as well, which is something that maybe Blues didn't do at Leicester City when they had the opportunity to exploit gaps and spaces. They went sideways rather than forward. So it will be interesting. I mean, it's not the Stoke of Tony Pulis of old, is it?
No.
And I think Blues have won the last 2 visits there, actually, funnily enough. So it's not, you don't go there with that foreboding anymore. So I'll be fascinated to see how they play because, as you mentioned, Mark Robins is such a wily operator, very, very knowledgeable football man, and he'll know what to do against Blues as well. I'm sure he will have a plan that he believes that they can execute that can give us problems. So it'll be a fascinating game, but it's just important for Blues to be solid, to be difficult to beat first and foremost, just to try to get at least a point on the board as we move into this next block of fixtures coming off the break.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that Chris Davies did say in this press conference, somebody brought up the subject of XG, and quite frankly, being of a certain age, my eyes glazed over. Sorry about that to our listeners and viewers under the age of probably 25 who might be grimacing and thinking, bad thoughts at that last statement. Apologies, but he did sort of make the point that we'd given away fewer chances, in terms of the XG against us than pretty much anybody else in the division, which does bode well.
Yeah, that is it was something I picked up on after the Leicester game. Actually, I did a little bit of research on that, and in most of the games, Blues were restricting the opposition to getting a clear sight of the whites of Ryan Allsop's eyes. So yeah, that does bode well, and I think in any campaign, especially in a promotion campaign, yes, you have to score goals and plenty of them, but it starts at the back. If you're tough to beat and you can grind out wins when you're maybe not playing that well, it's important. And Blues again, and we go back to Paik and Iwata, are quite key to that. They cover the spaces in front of the back four, and out of possession, Blues do work very, very hard to win the ball back high up. So with Stansfield not there, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because obviously we know he does set that tempo, doesn't he?
Yeah.
From the front with his relentless running and closing players down.
Do you see? Personally, I think that workload of Paik's and the fact, like you've said, the heightened emotion of playing for your country and just the miles he's got on his clock. I tend to think it might be an opportunity for him to. I know it's going to surprise nobody if I utter the words Tommy Doyle, because everybody's going to think, I'm in the pay of his agent or something. But I think it might be an opportunity to see what Doyle can do. Be interested to hear your thoughts on whether or not he might plump for Roberts, and when they might see Jack Robinson as well, because obviously 2 deadline day signings. I just wonder what your thoughts on when he might blood that pair. And
yeah, I think in terms of this weekend, I don't think Chris Davies will do anything particularly different from the last match. I'm more inclined to think that he would start Paik rather than Doyle, and if Paik has to come off, then Doyle comes into the equation. That's just that's my gut feeling with it. In terms of Patrick Roberts, wouldn't surprise me if he started. He's been in the building 2 weeks. He'll be itching to start, and he will provide something different coming in off the right hand side, won't he?
Yeah.
I am expecting him to start. Roberts, Demarai, Gray on the other side, that will be his first choice sort of wide pairing, if you want.
Yeah.
I'd guess so. Get him going, get him up to speed. With Stansted. So I'm thinking about those.
Yeah, I've
Jet
got you on
holidays,
yeah,
aren't I?
yeah,
Sorry, yeah. With Stansfield not available, it's interesting to see how he goes with Kyogo and Marvin Dux and see how that plays out, or whether Willem Williamson stays in that sort of role in the 10, sort of all right side coming inside role. So interesting conundrums there.
Have we cracked the number 10 position?
It's not really a number 10 position, is it, though? That's the thing. It's not a traditional number 10 like a John Torrell played as a 10, didn't he?
Yeah.
Off Donaldson. It's not that sort of role in this system.
Have we cracked it though? Whatever the role is, I mean, is it?
Chris
you
Davies
know what
will
I'm
say,
talking about with the
Chris
player
Davies
in
will
the
say he has, because it worked last season.
Yeah.
Playing not with a 10 but with a 10. So it's just it's just the way we don't have a playmaker 10, if that makes sense. I think there's a number of players that can play behind the front striker, but it is obviously the player coming out off from the right hand side, moves across, and often we'll have a front four. So it's quite fluid. So whether it's tweaked as the season goes on, there's variations. That will be interesting to see as well. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that Chris Davies sort of led him into a question really about that we sort of discussed towards the end of the previous podcast regarding the fact that the team is a new one. I sort of said, when do you think you might get a handle on exactly what people can and can't do? Because have we all been guilty of overlooking the fact that he mentioned the fact that we've had 12-14 players in this summer, and probably the same sort of churn go out, and he said we had similar the previous, so he said that's 50 to 60 players, the turnaround in quite a short space of time. We're talking about pretty much a little more than 12 months really, aren't we? 12-14 months I suppose really, since we were relegated and whatever. And he said by the time of the next international break, he will have a fair idea of where everybody's at. Is that a a fair enough time, do you think, 6, 7, 8 games in,
Yeah.
to start making judgments on whether or not players are going to actually form part of your core 11?
Yeah, I think so. In up to 10 games or so, as we saw last season, Blues are still finding their way a little bit in those opening games.
Yeah.
But because they had so much quality, they could still beat teams, but they weren't probably as slick or as fluid that the manager would have liked. But definitely,
Were you sitting on his press conference? I think that's why his answer was. To
it?
be honest, so well done, you.
I know ball. Come
There you go, mate. You're right. Yeah, you know the game.
No, it's common sense, isn't it? Over a 46-game season, you want that continuity. You want the team to bed down, and you'll get a handle of it at least, before a third of the campaign's done. And with the window shut now, with a run of games up to the next break, definitely we'll have more of a handle on how Blues are going to be and how competitive they're going to be.
Yeah, do you think sort of that October break is a decent sort of yardstick to use?
Decent barometer. Yeah.
Going forward. The only other change I was thinking that he might make. I know we're zipping across different topics here. Please forgive us. But if Bright say Samuel's been away with Nigeria in Africa, I know he played just for one half. Was it against Rwanda, I think?
Might have been in the second game, I believe.
Yeah. So I just wonder whether or not, again, working on the basis that he's been away, and he has got options, because we presume that, Cochrane will come back. And I know Ethan Laird, there was somebody basically profited from a moment's indecision from him for the first goal at the King Power. But I just wonder whether or not he might be worth, given the fact he is such a big character and left back isn't really his position, whether he might not be. He might be persuaded to take a chance with Ethan Laird on that side.
Yeah, like I said, an earlier answer, I think he'll go with what he considers to be his tried and trusted and his first choice. I'd imagine that, say, Samuel will start, as long as he's in decent enough condition, and I think Ethan Laird will stay at left back as well. Yeah. I just think he will carry on down that route personally, and Laird also will have had a good 2 weeks break, stroke rest, and also to interpret that role a bit better maybe.
Yeah.
Again, that's just my gut feeling, judging on what Chris Davies has done in the past. He might surprise us, I don't know, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, just moving away from the team selection and the actual game itself, Cole, the other thing that's irked a few people during the last couple of weeks was the announcement of the prices for the Coventry game away from home. £45 and 36 quid for concessions and whatever means really for a family of four you're looking at nearly 160 quid. And then obviously if you have a drink or you have a pint and a pie and whatever, you'd be lucky to see much change out of 200 quid if you go into the Sky Blue or CBS and whatever. I just wonder what your thoughts were on that in general, because the OSC, I think the Blues Trust rather, issued a fairly strong statement coming out.
Both the Blues Trust and the OSC, and quite rightly. It's just disgraceful, really. 45 quid and what is it, 38 quid? Is it 38 quid for
38, 36, whatever.
For concession child. You can't justify it, and Coventry won't really care, I guess, because it's sold out, so they'll be just rubbing their hands with glee, and But it's wrong, and what Blues have done well in recent years was, pegged at 20 or 25 quid had reciprocal arrangements. Remember, there was one with Reading.
Yeah.
But what the Blues do in the return fixture at St Andrews?
Well,
100 quid.
Well, I haven't. This is one of the failings that I'd like to see the independent regulator step in on. If they're going to actually act as the guardian of the game, then they have to pretty much step into decisions like this and make it affordable for away fans to attend games. Don't forget, people are travelling long distances. Yeah. They're paying for coach travel, train travel on top. Petrol and whatever. It turns into and let's face it, the atmosphere at football matches is so much better when there's a decent away contingent in the building. I'm not blaming Coventry's fans. I'm not blaming whoever made the decision. And you're right. simple, supply and demand suggests that if Blues have sold it out, then they couldn't care less, and I sort of get that. But I do think that if we're going to have an independent regulator, and I know he's stepping into the throes of a business, but surely there's a price point that everybody's sort of happy with. Football fans will sort of say, I don't know, 30 quid and whatever, or he's decent. He's decent for an afternoon of football. And Blues, what I'd like to see Blues do. I'd like to see Blues maintain a bit of their own integrity and a bit of class, and saying that we're not getting involved in that. We've set our policy at 30 quid, 35 quid. We're going to main that, and we won't penalise Coventry's fans. It's not their fault.
That's interesting because Tom Wagner has been quite steadfast in terms of when there's been talk about the sports quarter and Blues moving to a new stadium. He's talked about ticket prices and basically said that they have no plans to sort of price out your average, normal, hardcore fan, which you'd hope.
Yeah.
So hopefully, they stay true to that. Because if Blues start going down the road of 45 quid, 50 quid, it's like you said, it's wrong. Show a bit of class, and also, but it's tough nowadays. The cost of living, it's tough. So you can't really justify charging 45 quid for an adult for a football match. You just can't.
Now I think and I think it's particular because you can pretty much see the highlights the minute you get out the ground as well, can't you? So you really are going for that experience, and it's like I say, it's nothing against Coventry. It's nothing against Coventry's fans. I'm sure if the boot was on the other foot, I think they had an issue at Leeds a couple of years ago. My beloved wife tells me that they had an issue, but again, I think Coventry sold out. So
yeah, but I mean, the price at Ellen Road for Blues was quite extortionate in the last couple of years as well. But yeah, like you said, you hope that the club sticks to their guns and go, no, this is our policy, this is what we're going to do. You let them carry on doing what they do, we'll do it our way.
Yeah. Well, great. I think that just about wraps it up for this week's podcast. As per usual, follow, like and subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you get the chance to win one of these from our sponsors, Beauty Spirits, when we get to the magic 1,000 subscribers mark. So look, thanks for being with us. Just a final shout out to Davison's Law and our co-sponsors who are Beauty Spirits, AMG Logistics and Drain Tech. Thanks for being with us. Until next time.